Take a live look at Capitol Hill this morning as Pentagon top brass are set to appear today before Senate lawmakers for the first time since the botched U.S. exit from Afghanistan. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs General Mark Milley, and leader of U.S. Central Command General Frank McKenzie will face questions about why Americans were left behind. The attack killed 13 U.S. service members. The U.S. drone strike that killed 10 innocent civilians, including 7 children, by mistake, and, of course, abandoning Bagram Air Base, all on the docket this morning. It comes as new reporting reveals General Milley asked Russian counterparts to use their military bases to respond to any emerging terrorist threats in Afghanistan. Joining me right now is Fox News senior strategic analyst, General Jack Keane. General, it's always a pleasure. Thanks very much for being here this morning. Wow, what a turn of events. The U.S. asking Russia to use their bases because we don't have a base anywhere in the neighborhood because we abandoned Bagram Air Base. General.
Well, actually, it's the reverse. When President Biden met with President Putin back in June, and they were talking about the United States having some capability in the region to be able to monitor terrorism, Putin did not want the United States dealing, with his Russian surrogates, countries in the region, the so-called stands, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, etc. And it was at that meeting that he said, well, there's always the possibility you could put your capability at one of the Russian bases inside that country. The National Security Staff, Jake Sullivan and company, asked General Milley, knowing this conversation would likely come up when he met with his counterpart just recently in Helsinki. In other words, General Milley's Russian equivalent to himself, Generalissimo, and he's just trying to feel the general out. Was Putin serious about this proposal or not? So that we don't know the answer to that. So that's where that is. Listen, we need some kind of capability in the region to be able to watch the growing epicenter for terrorism that Afghanistan will become. We lost our 7 military bases. We lost our multiple CIA bases. And coming all the way from the Persian Gulf or all the way from an aircraft carrier in the Indian Ocean is thousands of miles away, and it doesn't give you much accurate intelligence dealing with what's happening on the ground every day.
Yeah, I mean, which brings me back to this decision to abandon Bagram Air Base. I mean, that's something I think that was such a blunder. And Congressman, the former head of Homeland Security, Congressman McCall, was on Sunday Morning Futures with me a few weeks ago and said that at that meeting that you're referring to, Putin threatened Biden and said, shut down Bagram. So I wonder how much pressure came from Putin and Xi Jinping to close down Bagram Air Base.
No, I don't believe that's a factor in any of those decisions. I mean, the key decision was the withdrawal decision, and there's going to be some real tough pointed questions today by the senators. I've spoken to many of them, to be frank about it, and they really want some answers. I mean, you went down the litany of challenges that the American people have to contend with as a result of this Afghanistan debacle. We got a humanitarian crisis for sure on our hands in Afghanistan. It's heading towards a failed state for sure, and likely civil war. And here we are almost a month later, Maria, and we've got hundreds of American citizens and green card holders and tens of thousands, if not just thousands, of SIVs or our Afghan partners still behind enemy lines. And it's been very slow, just a dribble of people to get out of there. It's a month later, and look where we are. So that there's going to be some very, very tough questions today.
General, I want to ask you about the China story this morning. The White House is claiming that there is no link between the deal that the U.S. and China struck over the release of the CFO of Huawei and China's decision to release 2 Canadians who were detained in the country for 3 years. General, we've also learned that 2 U.S. citizens have been released from China as well, who had been blocked from leaving since 2018. So here you have the U.S. Requesting that China detain the CFO of Huawei, and just as her plane is taking off, that happened in 2018, just as her plane is taking off from Canada to go back home to China, China releases hostages that have been there, as well as those Canadians releasing from China as well. And they're telling us that there is no link. This was a hostage swap. That's certainly what it looks like. What are your thoughts on this, with the CFO of Huawei being released and sent back home?
Yeah, well, I think you got it right. I mean, it is what it is. Of course, there's a linkage here. There's a quid pro quo here. But some things did happen. During the Trump administration, the Trump's Justice Department was trying to negotiate a deal with Ms. Meng, the Huawei executive, who compromised herself with a bank in terms of denying that a Huawei company was doing business with Iran against the sanctions were being imposed. So there was a lie and deception there. And we were trying to get her to admit that. And then she would be found guilty. Well, she finally did that with the Biden Justice Department. And certainly the quid pro quo took place. The Chinese released the 4 people that they were holding, 2 U.S. citizens and 2 Canadian citizens. I would have preferred her actually to go through a trial, because they put, the Chinese put the 2 Canadians through a trial, found them guilty of espionage and treason and all these other things, and the humility of all of that, plus the conditions that the 2 Canadians were in, completely different in terms of being in a prison as compared to Ms. Meng, who was staying in her luxury home in Vancouver, British Columbia. Yeah, so I would have preferred that outcome. But yeah, there's definitely linkage here, Maria. It is what it is. It's a hostage swap.
Of course, yeah. And by the way, the White House confirmed that during that call between Xi Jinping and Joe Biden a week ago, it lasted an hour and a half. They confirmed that, yes, Xi Jinping did bring up Ms. Meng. And that he wanted her released. So there's that as well on that confirmation. General, it's always a pleasure. Thanks very much.